So we're replacing the head gasket on this 1990 Toyota Tercel. They blew the head gasket, and the way you can tell that is not in every case, but in this case he had overheated it, and I think it was because he had a bad coolant leak at one of the hoses. I don't know which one it was. I didn't do the repair, but it had overheated it so bad that the head gasket blew. So the way you can tell that is you would check the oil. Okay, so you would check the oil there's one way to tell if the head gasket is actually blown, and if you have milky oil consistency, kind of, it isn't just like a clear amber color. You're getting coolant in the engine oil, and chances are, if that's happened, the head gasket is blown, or the head is cracked, or hopefully not both. And we're hoping it's just the head gasket in this case. So here's the oil dipstick. So we're going to remove this and look at just the oil. And as you can see, it isn't a real clear. You've got like this kind of white, milky kind of consistency. It isn't. You get kind of a milkshake oil there. So that means you're getting coolant in it. So chances are the head gasket is definitely blown, and hopefully that's the only problem with this engine. So part of the disassembly process, you have to take off the head. So that means in this case, since it's an overhead cam engine, you've got to take off the timing belt. So in this case, usually before you do this, you want to bring the cam up to, you want to just look at your timing marks. First thing, like I said, is you want to bring your cam marks to the right position for reassembly, and just so you know, you have an idea in your head of what it should look like when you do put this thing back together. So you got to get the crankshaft mark aligned and the camshaft. So on these Toyotas Tercels, you've got a little mark right here. You can see this little bubble thing that I'm touching. That's your lower mark, and that's got to line with. You've got a mark on the outside of this cam sprocket, very small. Toyota doesn't give you real big marks for some reason. Okay, we're going to find that. So we're going to bring this bottom mark up, and it's really, you got to really watch for it. It's really little. Okay, I'm going to turn this thing, and you're going to see that mark come up. Very small mark. Okay, it's there. I don't know if you can even hardly see it, but it is there. Okay, so that's your lower crankshaft mark is lined up now. Now the top mark, we're going to check that. Mark is this 3E. Since this is a 3E engine, Toyota 3E, there's a 3E family of engines. The top mark's got to be totally straight up, and it's this hole in the sprocket. It's got to be exactly, probably lined up with this valve cover stud. And if that's the case, you're all lined up and you're good. You can remove that belt now. That's where it's got to go back together again. Another way to check this alignment for this upper cam sprocket is there's a hole in the sprocket. There's a hole in the sprocket right here. So, and then there's an indentation in that front cam cap to line up. When that's lined up, then you know you're right, and then it should fit in an indentation there, and it does. So that's another way to check it. The next step is we're going to take off the timing belt. So you're going to loosen the tensioner. Now the tensioner is this pulley right here. So you get your 12mm socket. Loosen this bolt. I'm going to loosen this bolt, this tensioner bolt right here. So now that the tensioner is loose, we can actually move that tensioner pulley. It slides in a slot. So we're going to pull that pulley back as far as we can. Oops. and hold it in that position. Okay, so we've pulled back the tensioner pulley as far as we can. You see the slots wider. So now that we've done that, we've got tension off the belt, and we can remove the belt. Take the belt off right here. And just kind of pull it off of the. You can pull this a little bit. It'll kind of get some tension off of those teeth, and then you just slide the belt off. Here comes the belt. Essentially, we got to take off this upper cam sprocket because we're going to send the head out to the machine shop, and they need to remove this. Now, this sprocket is on pretty tight, so we got to kind of grab it with something so when we take the bolt off, it's on very tight, that bolt. So what I do is I got this nifty pipe clamp arrangement, chain, chain, and I'm going to grab it with this. And this is going to clamp on one of these links of this chain to grab this sprocket. So I've got my pipe chain mounted on the sprocket, so now we're going to lock that on. Now I've got that sprocket really good. So the key with doing this is you want to put rags, if you do this, inside the chain so you don't damage the sprocket teeth, you know, which will be bad on the timing chain when you put it back together again. So now we got that. I got it wedged with this long screwdriver. This won't go anywhere. So now we can take this loose. So we got that off now. Now we can take off our sprocket. Now we can replace the seal, which needs to be replaced. It's leaking from heat and use, so we're going to replace that seal anyway. You got to take out the distributor. It's got two 12mm bolts. So we took off the first one. Here's the second. No big deal. Bolts on now. You just remove the distributor. Now it doesn't really. The distributor is keyed, so since the distributor is keyed, you can just pull that out and then just lay it over here on the side and get out of the way here. Alright. And next up, you want to take off all your injector plugs. It's just like a little kind of spring-loaded plug here. You just pull it up. That one broke. Oh, it's old. There's another one. Just kind of move this over to the back. Got to get out of the way. So the next step is you want to take off this fuel rail, which is where the injectors are getting their fuel from. This unit here. Now it's got another little connection back here. In this case, you want to take this off. Let's just take that loose. It's got fuel, pressurized fuel on it, so you probably want to be careful. It's not a lot. You want to. Really, the best way to have done this would be to run, disconnect the fuel pump fuse, or pull the fuel pump relay, or the fuse of the fuel pump, and then while the engine was still running, run it. So now you want to take off the fuel rail. We're taking the bolts out. So then you just kind of apply this. This one's coming up real difficult at all. It just comes off. And just make sure you don't lose your O-rings, which are going to be down there when you take this off. So now we remove the injectors, so now we can just kind of move the fuel rail out of the way. I've got some other hoses here that are kind of interfering. Just kind of remove those. Move the fuel rail over here. You want to remove the little radiator hose. So it's got this spring type of clamp on here. Now I got this nifty tool which is designed for the job. It kind of will grab these spring clamps and hold it closed while you remove the clamp. Let's see if we can do this now. So you got the clamp on the thing, so just kind of grab it and then it'll lock in position. It should anyway. And now you can just kind of, you got it it's loose. You just kind of take this off. Now that we've removed these three 12mm bolts from here, and then here, and there's one up on this whole unit, will just come off as a unit here. And then that'll really save some labor here to start taking off everything. Now that we got off our water outlet unit, the next step is the intake manifold. Okay, now there are two schools of thought on doing this. Now you could either disconnect all these connections off the manifold and then take off the head and the manifold as a unit, but the way I like to do it is I just remove the manifold while in the car. So now the way, it's got some bolts on the bottom beneath here, which are somewhat difficult to get access to. So what I do is I get a kind of a medium long extension with a socket on it, and then I'm going to go underneath here, and you always loosen the bolts from outside in. So the outside most bolts are the first ones you're going to take off, and then you're going to move towards the inside and take off the middle ones last. So I'm going to put this here on this bottom bolt and the bottom here, and then you can get access all the way underneath through the back with your ratchet. The ratchet on that outside bolt, I can remove the bolt. So now we're removing another one of these lower bolts off of this intake manifold. Lower bolt. Now we're going to move this upper bolt. You always want to remove the bolts outside towards the middle, don't you know? And then you tighten opposite. So this is another outside bolt we're removing. Another outside upper bolt. We already removed the lowers. The bolt you want to remove is the center bolt. You may not think it's important, but it's just the reassembly procedure is the opposite of the disassembly. So you want to tighten the middle bolts and then move outwards, but disassembly is outwards to inside. It just makes sure you don't have any leaks when you're done, and it keeps from damaging parts. This last bolt in the middle on the nut, or bolt, on the top for the intake manifold, you take that off, and now you can separate this manifold pretty much completely from the head. And there, that's off. Yeah, intake gasket's intact. Okay, so that's loose. This exhaust shield's got to come off next. Well, these bolts get really corroded and rusted, and there's a good chance they'll ring off. So you can get some kind of a penetrating oil lubricant. This stuff, Deep Crete, this works fairly good. So you just want to squirt it in there. Get in there really good as you can. This bottom one is giving me problems, so just, hopefully it'll get in the gap in there in the threads. Let that sit a few minutes. Still waiting for the penetrating oil to get into the bolts, and while we're waiting, we're going to take out these spark plugs. Use a spark plug socket, and it's kind of a swivel style socket. It has and then a rubber insert to grab the spark plug insulator to pull it out. So you just stick that on there. Spark plugs. Now when we take out the spark plugs, we're going to see which cylinder our coolant is getting into, because more than likely that spark plug firing is going to be very clean and washed off. This might, or it's got a lot of coolant in it. Okay, as you can see, this one's real wet, and I believe we've already found the cylinder that our coolant's getting into. So it should be, not wet with water and coolant on it. It should be maybe just some deposits, you know, maybe some burnt look, but this is really wet, so that's more likely getting coolant in that cylinder. That's cylinder number 1, actually. We're going to check our next cylinder to see if we're getting any, see if we see any surprises on this one. Also, usually they blow between the cylinders. And this one is kind of dry, but it's kind of foul, gas foul, black. The plugs are kind of worn anyway. It really needs, this engine needs spark plugs. 3, and it's also kind of fouled. And probably what's happened is, well, the coolant might have fouled the oxygen sensor, which is possible, and then it can't read. It'll read lean, and then it'll drive the system rich, which will cause this problem. It's very possible. So our deep creep seems to have worked. We're taking off now this last of the heat shield bolts. As you're letting that second flow off, as you're coming out fairly well. The heat shield, we're going to get access to these exhaust manifold bolts in there. Take out the exhaust manifold bolts. There's 3 on this side and 3 on the other. So now that we got there's a lower bracket again on this. We remove that lower bracket. Now we can just remove this exhaust manifold. When taking off these cam caps, it's important that you remember which one went where. So the front and rear caps are pretty easy to figure out, because you've got this on the number 1, or this first one here next to the cam sprocket, you've got a larger sealing area for the valve cover gasket as opposed to this. This one is much smaller. So you'll be able to tell which ones those are. But as far as these goes, as you can see, the number 1, or the first one next to going from the front of the engine towards the rear, has got 1 arrow on it. That's number 1 with respect to this. Okay, so that'll be number 1. The next one's got 2 arrows, so that'll be the second one. And then this one has got 3. You see that? And now the arrow points towards the direction, which is always towards the front of the engine. So that arrow, you want to make sure that when you put these back, the arrow is pointing that way. That's very critical in these, as far as these cam caps go. So we're going to take these off now. And you also want to take these out from outside towards the middle, with the middle ones being the last ones you loosen. Okay, let's do this. So now that we've got off our cam caps and they're placed in order here, we're going to remember the order and the direction that they went in. We can just lift the cam out. I'm going to put the caps back, because they're going to want those at the head shop if we do exchange this head. We don't know what we're going to do yet. Back the way it came, pretty much. It's kind of screwed on there. You don't want to lose any parts, is the point here. These rocker followers here. Now the important thing is you can't get these mixed up. These have worn into the cam lobes, and they got to be exactly in that order, in that position when they go back. But now the way they come off is there's a spring. It's kind of a clip, and if you just get a screwdriver and just go back there and just kind of pull it back, it'll release that. Here's another one here. Pull those back, don't get them mixed up. Got all of our rockers released. I've made this cardboard here because it's real important that they go back in the right order. And I punched holes in it to kind of hold them in position, and then and then the relative spacing here. So you just I'm just going to put these things here. I'm going to take out the clips. All of our rockers here in the position that that they'll go back in, and this will be the front of this is the front of the engine here. So front of the vehicle anyway. Okay, so now we're ready to take the head off. Now we're ready to actually remove unbolt the cylinder head. So the thing to remember is when you take out the bolt, you always want to work from the outside, this being the outside, this is outside, this is an outside bolt, towards the inside. So the inside bolts are the last ones. So the first ones I'm going to loose and remove are these, and I'm going to slowly work towards the middle. That's because you don't want, the bolts are on real tight, and if you remove the inside first, the head could flex upwards because there's tension still between the head casting and the bolts pinned on the end, so you don't want to cause any warpage or damage. So if you remove the outside ones first and then work towards the middle, you won't do that. Okay, so here we go. So we're going to take out this first. So the first one's loose. And then you want to probably go to the far corner, remove that, loosen that one, and go here. So these are going to be our last two bolts. Remove. Okay. I'm going to start taking them out now. From the outside in, it doesn't matter, they're all loose, you can take it wherever you want. But the point is you just loosen from outside towards the middle. Head bolts out, now we're going to actually remove the head itself. So, I don't know how stuck it is, but we're going to find out. So just get like a big screwdriver, and then you want to pry up against the head somewhere, and then make sure you're against the metal part of the frame or something so you don't damage anything. And then there, get loose. Nice. Put the head up, off. And there, we got it off. So let's see what we got here. Here's our colon in our cylinder, number one. Just don't want any cracks. See that head gasket. See our head gasket looks like it got blown right there. See the difference in this side and over here. This is nice and round, and this one kind of ruptured. So that's like a bad gasket. Okay.